Hi. For those of you who don't know me, I am Sandra with Ever Changing Life. And today we're going to be talking about overwhelm and what you can do about it. So, overwhelm can be very costly to your life. And you don't feel efficient. You start to feel bad about yourself or your relationships. It can affect your sleep patterns, exercise, your eating habits. So, if you don't identify what you're overwhelmed about and that you're overwhelmed, it's going to start to show up in your life in a big way. You can't get clear about what to do next. That's the biggest thing. So, a lot of things fall through the cracks on every level. The feelings come first, followed by the behavior. So, the two big feelings that people experience when feeling overwhelmed are fear and guilt. And funny enough, I guess I should have started at the beginning. You know how when you have one of those days? Yeah, every day when I record something is that day for me. So, overwhelm and how you can, what you can do about it in your life. So let's start again. So, what's important about overwhelm is that it's not just affecting one system. It's affecting you emotionally, physically, and it's also affecting your behavior. So, emotionally, if you are overwhelmed, you might feel really anxious or you might feel confused or you might feel very dull and flat. Now, if we're overwhelmed, we are flooded with emotion, and emotions can cause us overwhelm that can impair our prefrontal cortex, which is the piece of the brain that helps us make skillful decisions. Now, I don't know about you, but if I'm going to make a decision, I'd kind of like that part of my brain to be working. So many of us are making large and small decisions right now, and this part of the brain can really help. Physically, you feel exhausted, and when you're overwhelmed, you don't sleep well, you don't feel efficient, and you don't feel like you have any energy. You probably feel tense and tight, maybe even body aches or pain. Your heart could be racing. Sorry, I thought I had shut that off. Your heart could be racing, and you may have trouble breathing. You could have an impaired immune system, prone to whatever illness is prone to whatever illness is going around. Wow, words are not going to come out today very well. Or maybe you're just feeling a little unwell. That's physically. Then behaviorally, when you're feeling overwhelmed, you just can't do anything. You can't do simple tasks. You procrastinate. You don't get back to people. You make poor choices and then beat yourself up for them. The cognitive impact of feeling perpetually overwhelmed can range from mental slowness to forgetfulness, confusion, difficulty concentrating, or thinking logically, to a racing mind, or an impaired ability to problem solve. Moodiness happens, crying easily, irritability, or being withdrawn. And now, here are some common reasons for being overwhelmed, whether brought on by exceptionally stressful time at work, a traumatic personal experience like losing a loved one, or another inciting factor. Emotional overwhelm can occur for a short burst of time or over a much larger period of time. Sometimes a series of hardships or challenges occurring in rapid succession can trigger someone to feel overwhelmed by unwielding emotions. Now, here are some common experiences that can lead to emotional overwhelm: relationship issues, physical or mental health issues, a demanding job, lack of nutrition, financial distress or anxiety, significant life changes, time constraints, the death of a loved one, personal traumas such as abuse, and habitual lack of sleep. Now, those are only some of them. Other things can happen as well. So I'd like to tell you a short story about me, actually, and how overwhelm has played a part in my life and how I know personally how overwhelm can affect you. How about in 2015, I lost my partner. He died unexpectedly. And that caused some overwhelm. A couple of weeks later, I lost my job. And because I hadn't been with him that long and we weren't married, I had to move, which was also very emotional for me. And then my daughter, who I spoke with 4 to 5 times a week, who was living in the US, decided to go on an extended holiday, we'll call it. Actually, it was a road trip to find out where she belonged in the world, her and her husband. So speaking to her 4 or 5 times a week was just no longer an option. She just would not be that available. And then I entered menopause. And a couple of weeks later, my niece passed away, who was the same age as my daughter, unexpectedly. So I had a lot happen in an extremely short period of time. That was from July to October. That's one thing on top of another thing, on top of another thing, on top of another thing. And it took a while to regroup. It took a while to not have all of the stress. It took a while to get rid of all the emotion, to be able to function again, to be able to make decisions, to be able to make rational thought, actually. All the things I've already mentioned, I experienced. I experienced difficulty concentrating or thinking logically. My mind would race. I would be forgetful. There was confusion. I would procrastinate. I was having an impaired ability to problem solve. I just couldn't think as quickly as I had been used to. So all of those cognitive things, and of course I wasn't eating very well and I wasn't sleeping very well. And I just generally felt unwell. So I've experienced this firsthand. So what are some of the big life consequences of not addressing overwhelm? Well, overwhelm can be extremely costly to your life. If you don't feel efficient, then you're not doing things efficiently. And you start to feel bad about yourself and your relationships. It can affect your sleep, your exercise, your eating habits. So if you don't identify that you're overwhelmed, it's going to start showing up in a big way. You can't get clear about what to do next. And a lot of things fall through the cracks on every level. So the feelings come first, then it's followed by the behavior. So the two big feelings that people experience when they are in overwhelm is fear and guilt. So fear, for example, the fear of saying no to a neighbor. So you do favors when you don't have the time or space to do it. For me, it was the fear of where my life was going to go. And guilt, for example, that feeling that someone might be mad at you if you don't do something for them. Saying no is incredibly uncomfortable and difficult, which is probably why we say yes more than we say no. And we say yes far more than we should. So let's peel back that layer, that struggle to say no. Fear and guilt play a part here as well. So they are usually the emotions that block us from saying no. So we say yes when we maybe should say no. And then at the end of the week, you come down on yourself because you haven't done everything that you were supposed to do because you were doing stuff for other people. Now, this can become a big cycle, and you begin to get stuck in that place of overwhelm, charged by fear and guilt. So when you have clarity, you say no when it's appropriate, even if the other person might be a little bit upset. If you're clear, you would never do something out of guilt. I want to say that again. If you are clear about what your mission is, about what goals you want, you would not feel guilty about saying no to someone else. When you have clarity, you feel very grounded. You feel like you have that emotional integrity. You know what's good for you and when it's time to say no. And then you actually become more productive, not just because you don't have a ton of things on your plate, but you actually are more focused and more into it when you're doing the projects or taking care of your family, whatever you need to do. Now, I want to mention tapping here because that's what I do. And if you noticed in the title, this is part 1. Next week, we will do some tapping on some of the things I've mentioned. So when you're tapping, you want to calm down your mind and body before you start making decisions. And tapping helps you do that. Tapping helps you calm down your mind, your amygdala, the flight, fight, and freeze center of your brain, so that it works in conjunction better with your prefrontal cortex. So when you get triggered, when you get anxious, your amygdala kicks in and it disperses all of your energy to your body so that your body is prepared to fight, run, or stay extremely still. And when that energy gets dispersed into your body, there's no energy for your brain to function. So you're not thinking clearly. You need to calm down your brain and your body in order to make clear decisions and have clarity over your decisions. So the problem with overwhelm is people say, I'm going to do it this way. I'm going to organize this and I'm going to do something different. Well, normally you don't, because you are literally in a psychological state of chaos. So until you calm down the nervous system and then you can get clarity. Once you do that, until you calm it down, you're not going to be making wonderful decisions. You're not going to be making clear decisions because you're going to be literally in that moment. And while being in the moment is a great thing in some instances, when you are in overwhelm, that's not the best time to make huge decisions. So tapping actually helps calm down the nervous system. And tapping is tailored for us to calm down our nervous system. So once we calm that down, we can start to get better ideas. We can start to get ideas, period. When you are in overwhelm, getting an idea at all about what you're going to do next is pretty hard. And we can start to get direction. And we can start doing things differently. So one of the things that I've found is there is a fear of clarity, and I've had that as well. So what happens when you get clear and you get out of your way? You get things done, right? You make wonderful decisions. You're more present with your family. You're great with your body. You get your exercise done. You get your projects done. You're grateful to people and you're kind to people. When you're not clear, It's usually because you know there are consequences for being clear. And most people have the wrong idea about the word consequences. The word consequences just means that there is a result. This is the result of the action you have taken. So consequence is neither good nor bad. It's just the result of an action you've taken. But if you are perpetually unclear, there's reason. And usually it's because there is a fear there, which then leads to guilt. So if you are unclear about what road you want to take in your business, for example, you are probably in fear of success, or you're in fear of abundance, or you have this tape playing in your head that says you can't do it. So learning how to say no and setting boundaries is really important. And you can't do that unless you're clear. So not being clear is a boundary issue. Because when you're super clear, nobody crosses your boundaries. When you're super clear about what you want, when you're not in overwhelm and you have a clear goal or mission, you know how to say no. So one of the things I want you to remember is you have to deal with the emotions before the behavior, because the behavior won't change if you still have the emotions that are attached to it. So like I said, next week we're going to do some tapping on the different things I've been talking about here. And you can join me next week for that tapping session. And make sure to subscribe to the YouTube channel, my YouTube channel, so that you can get the updates as to when I'm doing this live, and you can join me and make sure you get those tapping sessions, because tapping actually will help to calm you down, eliminate stress, and help you be more clear. So next week, we're going to do some tapping. And in the meantime, if you need to know more about me, I'm Sandra with Ever Changing Life, clearing energy clutter, mind, body, soul, and home. And I will see you here next week, 9 a.m. In the meantime, have the most amazing week.